Hi, my name is Yishus and I play a thief on the Blackgate server. Today I'll be presenting outnumbered footage from the first week of the NA Tier 1 Gold League. My spec and gear information can be found in the description below. First up, I'll take on a Necromancer, Guardian, and Elementalist on the southeast Bloodlust point. I open by stealing to the Necromancer as his fear is the most effective at dealing with a large group of enemies. However, I get blinded as I try to use the fear, so it misses and I then get ringed in and take heavy AoE damage from the group. I manage a Cloak and Dagger and then stay in stealth so that I can exit the enemy's zone of control. With the enemies unsure where I am, I can now quietly reopen on the Necromancer and get heavy damage into her. As soon as the teammates notice me, I immediately evade out and enter into a Dagger Storm. As this is a very condensed point, it does excellent AoE damage. Additionally, it reflects the Guardian's Immobilize and the Elementalist's Fireballs back at them. This brings the Elementalist down, and as he's in mist form, I immediately re-stealth and open on the Necromancer to take her down as well. This leaves the Guardian with no option to revive both enemies. As I stomp the Necromancer, I steal to her and immediately use the fear to interrupt the Guardian from reviving. He evades, but this leaves me enough time to complete the stomp on the Elementalist. I immediately re-stealth and get a good backstab into the Guardian. I start to get low on health, so I back off and heal up quickly, and then move in to reopen on the Guardian again. I first throw some auto attacks to break the blind that's on me, and then dance around the Guardian, getting another Cloak and Dagger off, allowing him to evade, and then immediately following up with a Heartseeker to complete the kill and gain the stomp. Note that the Scarecrow finisher will be used throughout this video. Next, I find 3 Jade Quarry attempting to take our south camp, a Guardian, Mesmer, and Thief. I refuge in order to move in with stealth, and then apply Basilisk Venom to open on the Mesmer with heavy damage. Unfortunately, my first Heartseeker did not crit, so she gets away, and I immediately steal to the Thief and use the stolen ability to re-stealth. The Thief looks like the next good target, but I won't have enough stealth to reach him in time for a backstab, so I re-stealth on a Mesmer clone. The Mesmer is running Condition Application on Clone Death, which makes it very painful for me to re-stealth on the clones. Regardless, I manage to get a backstab into the Thief, and he re-stealths. I re-stealth again on a clone as I'm trying to avoid allowing the bursty Mesmer or Thief to get full damage into me. However, my next Cloak and Dagger gets blinded and I miss, and I then take a full backstab from the Thief. I then try to chain a Cloak and Dagger to stay in stealth, but I mistime it slightly. This puts me in a very dangerous position to be bursted by the Mesmer and Thief. In order to escape the Thief Heartseekers, I immediately shadow step away and kite over the bridge with Heartseekers. As the enemies retreat back, I immediately shadow step back and re-stealth on a clone, then use the stolen ability to gain more stealth, pop a Basilisk Venom, and plan to open on the Thief. I wait for stealth to expire, pop a Cloak and Dagger, then immediately backstab to get a full round of burst into the Thief. This takes the Thief down, however I take a cripple from the Mesmer's Phantasm and Clone Death. I reopen again on the Thief and nearly get him down, but he manages to get away and I'm now in a bad position and need to re-stealth with Blinding Powder. The Thief reappears and he's still my best target. I attempt to chain a stealth on the Thief, but again mistime it and end up going immune to stealth. Regardless, I manage to get the Thief down with a Heartseeker, but will not have time to gain a stomp before the enemy's duel revive him. I attempt to steal backstab the Thief, but my steal doesn't go off, and I end up hitting a clone, which gives me more crippling conditions, so I'm forced to now stealth and retreat in Shadow Refuge. The Thief is still going to be my best option, and I notice that he's low on health. However, I'm also low and decide I need to wait for my heal. Now I wait for the Thief to turn his back, steal and get a nice backstab, and nearly take him down again. However, he again evades away with a sliver of health, and I'm unable to take him down, so have to re-stealth with the stolen ability. I reapply Basilisk Venom and go in for a Heartseeker kill. However, it doesn't kill him, but he goes into a Shadow Refuge and pops back out, which gives me time to fully take him down. I attempt to re-stealth, but am blinded, so it misses, so I use Blinding Powder, wait for the Thief to reappear, and gain a successful stomp before the Mesmer can respond. I waste no time re-stealthing and immediately backstabbing the Mesmer. However, my next Heartseeker hits a clone, which cripples me. Regardless, I'm able to fully pressure down the Mesmer. I then move in with a heal to stealth and attempt to stomp, however I realize the Guardian will get the revive in time. I attempt to backstab the Guardian, but instead hit a clone, which cripples me. I'm able to instead counter with strong backstab damage to take out the Mesmer again. As I Cloak and Dagger to stealth stomp, the Guardian kills a mob and revives the Mesmer. I immediately Heartseeker up and keep pressure on the Mesmer. As she blinks away, I immediately shadow step and then Heartseeker to fully take her down again. I now begin a stomp, but the Mesmer decoys and goes into stealth. I re-stealth, and then move in one more time to finalize the stomp on the Mesmer. I'm unsure where the body disappears to, and it may be that she rage quit. Regardless, I'm now left to just finish off the Guardian, which is not too hard of a task as he's just tanky but doesn't do much damage. He goes immune with his elite, but I continue the pressure, steal from him, attempt to interrupt him with the stolen ability, but he evades away. I stealth, get one more strong backstab, finalize with a Heartseeker, and then move in for a cool stealth stomp animation. Next, I find myself defending a sentry and taking on a Guardian, Engineer, and Elementalist. This clip will again demonstrate the effectiveness of projectile reflection. As I move in, I immediately find the Engineer and take him as my main target as he's the most damaging. I stealth and get an initial backstab to threaten the Engineer. As soon as I take an Immobilize, I immediately enter into a Dagger Storm to counter all of the Engineer's burst. As expected, I'm able to reflect all of his projectiles, and this fully dispatches of the engineer. I now quickly turn and shadow step to the engineer to gain a stomp before the guardian can respond. Turning my attention to the guardian, I notice that he's likely just a tanky staff guardian. As such, I'm not too worried about burst and play a more aggressive scrapping role with the guardian. I get her rather low, continue the pressure, stealth one more time, get a great backstab. He blows a wall of reflection, which doesn't matter since I'm only meleeing. I then stealth and gain a successful stomp as an elementalist enters the fight. This lets me quickly open on the elementalist and get strong damage in while she's meteor showering. She notices the burst and misforms away, however I continue the pressure, stealth with a heal, and then move in for a backstab Heartseeker combo to fully take her down. This clip also demonstrates one of my favorite solo outnumbered hunting grounds. The sentry and passing Dolyaks make great bait to pull enemies out of their spawn and directly down to you. In the next clip, I find a group of Jade Quarry and jump down to engage them. However, I immediately notice a very large group of Sanctum of Rahl coming in, so I immediately refuge and let them steamroll over the Jade Quarry. My plan now is to engage the very back of the Sanctum of Rahl group and aggro some to come fight me. I find an up-leveled Mesmer to serve as excellent bait, get very strong damage in, but then lag out. However, this is effective enough at aggroing a Necromancer and potentially more enemies. I immediately Blinding Powder and move up the hill, noticing that I'm dragging a Necromancer with me. Now a safe distance from the Zerg, I turn and open on the Necromancer. However, a conditioned Necromancer is a very tough fight for this spec as I don't have much condition clear. I'm already crippled and attempt to fear him with the stolen ability, but he evades, and I then take a daze. At this point I re-stealth and attempt to get more damage in, but he now has a very full Death Shroud bar. I manage to churn through the Death Shroud and have him knocked out, but I'm now stacked with a large amount of conditions. He pulls me, then heals, and at this point I'm in a lot of trouble and decide I need to shadow step out and kite away briefly. Without any Condi clear and no heal up, I know I can't immediately re-engage, so I shadow step back and immediately Blinding Powder to confuse him on positioning. A Mesmer now enters and Chaos storms on top of my refuge. It looks like the Necro is rather confused on my positioning, so I believe I can get a quick backstab opening on the Mesmer. However, the Necro immediately notices. At this point I can tell I won't be able to handle both of these AoE heavy classes on this condensed bridge. Noticing that both of these enemies are out for blood, I believe I can kite them back and get a better positioning where I'll have the upper hand. I jump down to take falling damage and gain Blinding Powder on falling. The Necro follows, but is now confused on my positioning. I re-stealth to clear the conditions, and continue to confuse the enemies on my positioning. With Steel back up, I'm immediately able to steal into the Necromancer, and try to use the Fear in order to burst down the Necromancer. However, he realizes the incoming burst, and immediately goes into his elite form to gain a huge health pool and stability. Thus, I enter into Dagger Storm to cripple the enemies and kite away while doing decent damage reflecting off of the area mobs. However, the Dagger Storm triggers the Mesmer's on-block Torment condition. This applies too much pressure and I'm forced to refuge and heal up. I now notice that the Necromancer is very low on health and move in to get one final backstab and fully take him out. I cloak and daggers successfully and the stealth blinds the Necromancer, preventing his fear and allowing the stomp to complete. I immediately steal to the Mesmer and re-engage with a backstab to keep pressure up on him before he can react. I follow up with auto attacks and a dagger number 4 to cripple him and prevent any escape, stealth up, and gain a successful stomp. Next, I'll take on several very tanky Jade Quarry enemies, a Guardian and Warrior, on the southwest Bloodlust point. I open by auto-attacking the Guardian to break his Aegis, then cloak and daggering to stealth and getting a strong backstab, followed by stealing and using the stolen ability to interrupt the Guardian. At this point, I can see I've only done half the Guardian's health and can tell I'm in for a long haul. I then get knocked down by the Warrior's Hammer, and so I try to re-stealth with a Blinding Powder, but I'm still immune. I re-stealth with a heal, wait for the stealth to end, then get a cloak and dagger to stealth again, looking for a good opening on these two tanky targets. The trick with these fights is to be very patient and wait for one of the enemies to make a mistake and allow you to fully burst. Speaking of mistakes, I miss my cloak and dagger and am forced to retreat into a shadow refuge. I now reposition to confuse the enemies and notice that a third warrior has now entered the fight. I stay stealthed a little longer to see what the enemies are planning and now notice that the first warrior is leaving the fight. I now open on the second warrior to see how tanky she is and find that she's a squishier and better target than the original Guardian. However, both enemies now have their legendary great swords ablazing, and so I back out and then move in with a steal to reopen on the warrior. I get a strong cloak and dagger backstab Heartseeker combo, but then take strong damage from the warrior and have to re-stealth and heal up. However, I finalize with one additional backstab to the warrior and take her down. I stealth and go for the stomp, but the Guardian revives her before I can complete it. I back off and plan to reopen on the warrior again, but notice that the Guardian has just applied Aegis to both enemies, so I won't be able to cloak and dagger. Thus, I wait for the mob to break the Aegis on the Guardian, and then gain a cloak and dagger on the Guardian to re-stealth again. I move in to reopen on the warrior, but again hit an Aegis. I have to Cloak and Dagger again, then steal from the warrior and use the stolen ability to do heavy AoE damage. As I'm spinning, I notice the warrior using Bull's Charge and immediately evade to avoid her stun. I now heal up and re-stealth, and then apply Basilisk Venom to reopen again on the warrior. To get maximum burst, I wait for the stealth to end, then Cloak and Dagger again, followed by a backstab. However, the warrior survives this and charges away. I then miss my Cloak and Dagger on the Guardian, but manage to re-Cloak and Dagger on the warrior. I backstab the warrior, but have weakness applied to me, so the damage is very weak and I don't manage to take her down. I then miss my next Cloak and Dagger and am forced to Blinding Powder, then move in with a Heartseeker to continue the pressure. The warrior now realizes she's in trouble and is just kiting around, but I manage to finalize damage pressure, throw a refuge, and go for a stomp, but again the Guardian gets the revive off. At this point I can assume the warrior is flustered and capable of making mistakes, so I continue heavy AoE damage pressure with the stolen ability. However, I take a Bull's Charge from the warrior, and so I'm forced to Shadow Step out and heal up. The warrior is still very low, so I move in for a backstab and try to finalize damage. However, she whirlwinds out and I take heavy AoE cleave. Low on health with no utilities, I can't risk the stomp, so I Shadow Step back and move up the ledge to reset the fight a bit. This allows me to live, but also allows the enemies to recuperate and revive. I apply Basilisk Venom, then jump down to gain stealth, then open on the warrior. I notice the Guardian beginning to attack and immediately evade to avoid his immobilize. I stealth up on the warrior, then immediately steal up to her and get a strong backstab, followed by using the stolen spin ability to fully take her down. I now move in with a Cloak and Dagger to gain stealth and blind the Guardian. The blind prevents his knockback and I'm able to complete the stomp. I now immediately reopen on the Guardian to keep very strong pressure. I notice him gain Aegis, so rather than Cloak and Daggering, I use my heal to gain stealth. I attempt to reopen, but he evades away, so I stealth again, which prevents his immobilize. I try to finish him off with some Heartseekers, but he manages to get his heal off, so I stealth up to re-engage again. I queue up Basilisk Venom, hoping that this time I can fully take him down. However, he uses his elite ability, which prevents my Basilisk Venom. I take an immobilize from him, so I steal up to him and then immediately use the stolen ability to interrupt his action, then finalize the kill with a Heartseeker. This is another great reminder of how the Guardian's stolen ability can greatly counter their tankiness by interrupting their survival tools. As I finalize the stomp, the Guardian attempts to knock back, but my blindness on stealth prevents the knockback. Next, I'll quickly dispatch of a Guardian and Mesmer on the southeast Bloodlust point. As I notice the Guardian moving away, I steal up to him in stealth just to confuse him, then move up to the Mesmer as I know she's the squishier target. I open with a cripple to prevent her from kiting, then gain a stealth and a strong backstab as she stealths. She remains in stealth and I use a clone to gain stealth as I notice the Guardian returning. The Mesmer gets a heal off and I wait for my stealth to end, then immediately Cloak and Dagger and backstab again, followed by a Heartseeker to fully take her down before the Guardian can respond. The Guardian is too slow to begin reviving, and I succeed in the stomp, then immediately keep the pressure on the Guardian with a stealth and backstab. I dance around the backside of the Guardian while auto-attacking, then regain stealth with Cloak and Dagger. I attempt to backstab, but he evades and then uses his heal, so I re-stealth again, then gain another backstab, and he misses his immobilize. I also steal from him and use the stolen ability to interrupt him, but he then rings me in. He then starts to retreat, and I try to Heartseeker up to him, but get stopped by the ring. He continues down the stairs, and I jump off and continue to apply pressure with a few more Heartseekers and manage to fully take him down. Again, I'll finish with a stomp, showing off the cool effects of the Scarecrow finisher. Next, I find myself again defending the North Sentry point and am engaged on by an Engineer and Guardian. In general, the Engineer is always going to be the more dangerous target, as either condition or power based, they'll apply the heaviest pressure. I steal up to him in Cloak and Dagger, but notice that as I do I get blinded, which tells me he's running the blind on hit trait, and I'll need to be more careful about backstabbing. I attempt to stealth on the mob, but it runs away. I then get immobilized by the Engineer and immediately enter Dagger Storm so that he reflects all projectiles against himself. I then need to kite away to get out of the Guardian's AoE. At this point, the Engineer is blocking with his Toolkit 4 ability, and there's no point in me engaging on the Guardian. As such, I continue to kite out, then re-stealth, and try to reopen on the Engineer. However, I take a knockback from his utility, and then try to backstab, but again get blinded. However, the Engineer is extremely low, so I move in with a Heartseeker. The Guardian then leaps and blinds me, but I manage to keep the damage pressure on, stealth up, and go for a stomp, but I can tell that he's going to revive, and in fact the Engineer kills the mob to revive himself. I take a knockback from the Engineer, so I immediately try to stealth with Blinding Powder, but I'm still immune. Instead, I refuge to recover and manage to bait the Guardian into leaping and throwing himself right off the cliff. I debate reopening on the Engineer, but notice that I don't yet have good utilities up and my heal was not up yet either, so I instead evade through his minefield to break it and throw away the gunk, as it's not very useful as a stolen ability for this spec. I then reopen on the Engineer, pressure through his blind, attempt to cripple him, but he then again enters into his Toolkit number 4 block. The Guardian again returns, and I can tell that I'm not going to be in a good position in that crevice area, so I kite back a bit, and at this point the Engineer has entered into his Elixir X Rampager form. This spec is more like fighting a tanky crowd control warrior, so I make sure to just dance around him while still getting some good backstabs in. I see the Guardian moving back in and notice I don't have any evades left to avoid crowd control. Thus I heal to stealth up, which blinds the engineer, and his knockback then fails and I'm able to fully take him down with a backstab. I then stealth up to go for a stomp and zoom my camera in for a cool effect before engaging the Guardian. Completing the stomp, I immediately turn my attention to the Guardian, but miss my cloak and dagger. I evade through most of his greatsword burst and then move back in to get a clean cloak and dagger, and then re-engage on him, continuing to dance around him. I attempt another cloak and dagger, but it misses due to an Aegis, and I'm now a bit low on health, so I re-stealth one more time and back off for a second to gain a bit of health and stealth. I try once more for a cloak and dagger, again hit an Aegis, so I kite back a bit until my heal comes up, then turn to engage one more time on him with him rather low on health. He manages a pull on me, so I try to re-stealth with a blinding powder, but I'm still immune. I move back in and get one more Heartseeker to finalize the kill on him, stealth, and gain a successful stomp. Finally, for the end of this video, I'm going to share just some random outnumbered clips while I chat about a few other topics. First, I'd like to thank everyone again for their continued support and enjoyment of the videos. While I still don't have a lot of time to make videos, I made a special effort this week as the first week of Leagues to gather some footage and share it all with you. I played about 4 days this week from 2 to 4 a.m. Pacific time, as this was the best time I could find to gain these outnumbered fights without a huge chance of getting zerged. In general, I'm really enjoying revisiting the Thief. As many of you know, I took a hiatus to Engineer for a while, and while I still really love the Engineer, I think the Thief has a very awesome and distinct playstyle that's very different from the Engineer, and it's nice to mix it up. The Thief is all about burst and stealthy deceptive play, which I'm really enjoying, especially in this first week of Leagues. The Thief is much more effective at escaping from large zergs and generally staying alive in large outnumbered fights, and being that this is the first week of Leagues, there's a lot of popularity and a lot of zerg actions, so the Thief is just proving more survivable and more fun than the Engineer at the current moment. While gathering these clips, I also had a number of excellent 1v1s against more skilled players, and I'm saving those to also produce a video that should provide some great tutorials on how to 1v1 various classes as a Dagger Thief. I'll be making an effort to include especially difficult classes such as Condition Necromancers, Condition Engineers, Perplexity Engineers, Hammer Warriors, etc. Finally, I'll urge you all to check out Team Riot TV, all one word lowercase, on Twitch, as we recently started a streaming channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed.